Interesting enough, Shardless Bug is often, though it has some number of Wastelands in the deck, usually 2, it's a deck that, while it Wastelands, it usually does not Wasteland aggressively to try to mana screw the opponent.
Yeah, this version actually has 4 in it. The versions that we've actually mostly seen, as you mentioned, only do have 2. The mana base here is just a little bit different. There's also 2 copies of Creeping Tar Pit. Sometimes you'll just see 1 of those. So just a different take on the deck, as now Stoneforge Mystic is going to go searching. Again, Rutledge does have a Batterskull and a GTA in his hand already. So other equipment to find, Sword of Fire and Ice.
Yeah, so Rutledge still sticking creatures on the board, but he's behind on the board, and I think Kruger's going to press this advantage to continue to 2-for-1 Rutledge as much as he can, basically answering the equipment by killing all the creatures.
Yeah. Looks like that will be the game plan here, so there is the sword in the grip. Again, other equipment kind of hanging out over there in the hand as Jeremy Kruger is going to untap. Doesn't have to worry about Thalia anymore. Going to take a draw here, and we'll see what he can find. Looks like a Force of Will was picked up in the hand. Force of Will, not at its best in this particular deck. It's fine. We have seen people play, 2 in the main, 2 in the board, 3-1 split, things of that nature. Again, Kruger playing 4 in his main deck.
Yeah, Force of Will is basically the card that keeps the format honest. It's so good against the unfair decks that you need to play 4 of them, but in these grindy, fair matchups, you are 2-for-1ing yourself when you play it. So it's rare that a card your opponent plays is so good that you actively want to 2-for-1 yourself for it. It's good because you can do it in a pinch, but not the best card. And we see here, Rutledge stuck on 2 lands. He does have an Aether Vial set to 2, so he will still get to play, but if Kruger goes on a Wasteland plan, he's going to be able to stop things like equipping GTA, and Stoneforge even putting equipment into play.
There's a Shardless Agent too. It's not a little cascade action. There's a him. Jeez, this is a really good turn.
So yeah, this is what Shardless Bug does. It grinds so well. You see, first he has a removal spell for a land, then the 3-for-1 in Shardless Agent into him to 2-rock.
Valuing the Stoneforge there is a little bit interesting to me because I think you'd actually rather just have that Stoneforge be gone.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a 1-2. It's probably the worst card in your hand right now.
And the equipment, I think, would actually just be, the chances of discarding 2 pieces of equipment is a little bit scary to me. There goes the swords and there goes the GTA. So sword and Batterskull are what's left.
Yeah.
And Liliana hasn't even been used yet this turn.
There is an argument for keeping Stoneforge in play. If Jamie, he's really stuck on land, I think there's a worry that he's going to all his cards are going to eventually be discarded here. So you see he goes down to 1. Mm-hmm. And if that's true, you just want to get cards out of your hand as quickly as possible so that they don't all go into the graveyard.
Okay. Rutledge going to untap, Vile Trigger, see if it's going to go from 2. Stay at 2, or go up to 3. And it looks like it is moving on
Yeah,
out.
pretty important decision here is whatever card he draws, there's a decent chance he's going to have to discard it.
Yeah. Mother of Runes actually was the draw. Now the question here is, do you deploy the Mother of Runes, or do you just hold on to it with the intention of discarding it? And now this is going to be an attack here. Well, Shardless Agent gets to use one of these things.
Yeah, it's like this is an aggressive attack. He is trading a Stoneforge Mystic for a Liliana counter.
Yeah.
And really, to me, that seems like it's playing into Kruger's plan. Kruger's just trying to 1-for-1 and get card advantage. And
Kruger actually thought that his Shardless Agent was going to die when that's not even the case. So now the Batterskull is actually going to leave now too, assuming that Liliana does go up. And it has nowhere else to go. So there's a chance that Kruger, I think he's staring at a Force of Will right now, and another blue card, so there's a chance he might want to just force this. Yeah, and I actually like this.
Mother of Runes is one of the most important cards in this matchup for Death and Taxes because it can stop Kruger's plan of 2-for-1ing. It turns off his removal spells. And that's really his plan. He's like that mono black, a lot like mono black in Standard. He's just going to kill things, draw cards.
Yeah. And now for Kruger, he's going to play another Shardless Agent.
Brutal.
There's a Brainstorm. And even though it's not going to be the best Brainstorm in the world, it's better than nothing. Here's a Tarmogoyf and a couple other cards. Liliana's going to actually get to tick up here. He can actually set up with this Brainstorm, put the 2 cards that are relevant back on top of the deck, and just discard the irrelevant card to Liliana that's going to tick up.
Yeah, especially if he has a land in those 3. Which
that's perfect. Yeah.
And it's not just any land, too.
This is, almost a borderline perfect draw for how this game is going. Jeez.
If you want to talk about grinding, Kruger has reduced his opponent to 0 cards in hand and 3 permanents in play.
Yeah. You couldn't really ask for much better.
It's exactly what he wants to be doing.
Yeah, after drawing Judge Familiar, Jamie Rutledge is going to concede this game. So Jeremy Kruger wins game number 1 in very, very impressive fashion. Charlotte's Bug up a game here with Death and Taxes. These two players do play for top 8. We'll take a look at sideboards, my friend. And you have the Death and Taxes deck in front of you. So where do you start?
Well, in the sideboard, I would guess you're going to want to stop some of the 2-for-1s that Kruger has access to. Rutledge has 2 Leyline of Sanctity in the sideboard, and that's a card I do like in the matchup. It's not ideal, but what it does stop is it stops him to Turok, it stops the 2 Liliana of the Veils, and it stops, well, he doesn't have any Thought Seizes in his main, actually. So those are the 2 cards it stops. So that's 6 cards in the deck, but there's some pretty important cards, and I wouldn't be upset boarding that in. Other than that, he's got a lot of different hate cards. He's got Spirit of the Labyrinth that could be good against Ancestral Visions. Other cards, Canonist, Arbiter, I don't think he would be using. The last card he has Cataclysm.
One of my favorite cards. It is just expensive. I mean, that's the issue with the card. If you're able to cast it in appropriate matchups, it's very, very good, especially because it does kill Planeswalkers. Yes, it does. Okay. I was had to think of the wording of the card. You get to keep 1 enchantment, 1 artifact, 1 land, 1 creature, and sacrifice everything else. So This card was made in Exodus before Planeswalkers. So
you get to keep 0 Planeswalkers.
Correct. You do not get to keep any of those. So it actually does a nice job of killing them. And as we saw in that particular game, the Planeswalkers and Liliana and Jace would have been good if it came down. Were quite good there. So there's a chance that Jamie does board those in. On Kruger's side, 2 Toxic Deluge are really good in this matchup. You can say the same thing about 2 copies of Pernicious Deed. Heck, even 2 copies of Golgari Charm, also pretty good. 2 Submerge, 2 Diabolic Egg, 2 Thoughtseize, 2 Flusterstorm, and 1 Chill. I like the first 6 cards, which are all removable: Deluge, Deed, and Charm. The other cards, 2 Diabolic Eggs are okay. I'm not terribly excited about those. Submerge, Thoughtseize, Flusterstorm, I think those can stay. And then the 1 Chill is, not for this particular matchup. So.
Yeah, I like anything that can sweep the board here. Really, anything that can generate a 2-for-1, I think is something that Kruger is interested in. That's, he is, like a lot of his grinding decks, a deck that gets a lot better after sideboarding. And if every card turns into a 2-for-1, he's going to beat up on the fair decks.
Yeah, this deck is 2-for-1 City. That's all this deck really does. Is it just wants a 2-for-1 its opponent into the ground, and it's really, really good at doing that. I mean, you saw the power of Charlotte's Agent in that game alone. 2 of them were cast, and the Liliana was generating a huge advantage as well. And you just 2-for-1 your opponent right into the ground, and that gets the job done a lot of the time. So that's how Charlotte's Bug actually made a name for itself, because that's what happened is that Bug decks got really, really popular, and Bug decks just grinding to the ground, and this deck was better at grinding out other Bug decks. And then we had Jund kind of show up as well, and those decks are just the most grindy decks possible. And when you can actually set your deck up to actually, you're grinding, but you have an Ancestral Vision on Suspend, it's okay. We're both out of resources. I'll draw 3 cards. And that was the big trick.
Yeah, and that trick really pushed Charlotte's Bug over the edge. Before that, we saw a lot of Bug control decks, which are really just stacks of removal spells, wastelands, a couple Planeswalkers, maybe even a couple Life from the Loams. They're very good at grinding, but the explosiveness of Charlotte's Agent into Ancestral Visions really lets this deck go to a whole nother level of card advantage.
Yeah. And it's not as good as it used to be. I'm curious to see how this deck can potentially be updated to fight against the Delver decks, because it seems like it's still a fine deck, but if you want to be playing some fair Magic that really, does a pretty nice job against other fair decks, it seems like Delver decks are the place to be right now, and not Charlotte's Bug so much anymore. Maybe that's because of the addition of Trinity Nemesis, a card that Kruger is not playing, but, maybe not. Maybe things could be changed to maybe update this deck a little bit. It seems like it's been just kind of doing the same thing for a while now.
Yeah, that is true. The list hasn't really changed very much in the last year. There are some differences in the deck, and I think Kruger's going toward a couple of them. He's lighter on the Lilianas than the deck has been. He's not playing Thoughtseize right now in the deck. He has, it looks like he's instead playing more Force of Wills. He's playing an Umezawa's Jite right now.
Yeah, the numbers are definitely different this go around. I mean, he does have 4 copies of Inventoric. We've seen the versions of this deck have 2 or 3 copies of that card, not always a 4 of. As you mentioned with the mana base, you normally see them have 2 Wastelands, because a Wasteland game plan isn't something this deck really can do that well. I mean, their mana is pretty stretched on what they can do, but having 4 Wastelands, it's Legacy. It's pretty hard not to play 4 Wastelands.
Yeah, he's pretty aggressive on his mana here. He has 21 lands and 4 Wastelands right now in the deck, which for a deck like Charlotte's Bug is pretty aggressive. The deck actually wants to hit land 4, maybe even land 5.
Yeah, a lot of the time. It's a pretty mana-hungry deck for a Legacy deck. And when you do have 2 Jaces in your deck and, you want to be setting up some other things, Deathright Shaman, of course, helps to facilitate the mana thing, but especially even when you have like 2 creeping tar pits, and those actually get a lot of work done in the deck, keeping planeswalkers in check. You do want more mana than your traditional legacy deck, as we are underway here in game number 2. Rutledge going to start off here with a Mother of Runes. Kruger going to consult his hand before just passing the turn back. And you can actually see Rutledge's hand right now. It's not the best hand in the world. He's got a Port, he's got a Cataracel, he's got a Mangara. I'm not sure if there's a Caracas hanging out over there as well. It looks like there is. So his hand is a little bit on the slow side. He wants to get that Mangara and Caracas engine going, but that takes a little while.
Yeah, turn 1 Mother of Rune's so good for Rutledge here. A lot of Kruger's grinding ability relies on pinpoint removal. So turn 1 Mother of Runes is probably the best start against his deck. We'll see how he's able to navigate it this game.
There's a Spirit of the Labyrinth. Now, this is a card that has not seen a lot of play in this in Death and Taxes. Of course, when this card was, released, everyone's talking about, wow, this card is completely insane in Legacy, and it just hasn't really stuck yet.
Well, I mean, it's a 3-1 for 2, so it still fits into that Hate Bear's plan of Death and Taxes. The question is how much it actually inconveniences your opponent. Sure, they can't brainstorm, and in this case, they can't brainstorm or cast Ancestral Visions. So there is a lot of potential here. I like how, especially it's being protected by Mother of Runes right now. This to me seems like a situation where Spirit of the Labyrinth could be very good. And I'm interested to see just how much inconvenience it is for Kruger.
Now that 1 toughness is kind of the whammy on the card, because Kruger does have the ability to bring in the Golgari Charm in this matchup. He's actually going to brainstorm in response to the Spirit of the Labyrinth so that it doesn't absolutely ruin him. But, a lot of the cards that Kruger actually has in his sideboard kind of go over the top of this card. 2 Toxic Deluge, 2 Pernicious Deeds, and then 2 copies of Golgari Charm. Assuming all of those cards are in his deck after board. And
that's something which the deck with Charlotte's Bug actually can do to be good against Mother of Runes. There's some lateral hate going on with True Name Nemesis that's hurting Mother of Runes. People are playing cards like Golgari Charm and Toxic Deluge to kill True Name Nemesis, and as a result, decks are somewhat prepared to deal with the Mother of Runes.
Yeah. That's all that's really going on here. Is you just see Brainstorm is going to be resolved. 2 cards are going to go back here for Kruger. Then Spirit of the Labyrinth will probably come into play. I mean, it could be worth, forceful and battling over this. So it doesn't mean that it's resolved just yet.
It really depends on how many draw 3s are in Kruger's hand. I mean, if he has 2 more Brainstorms and an Ancestral Visions, sure. But if he has a Deluge or a Golgari Charm, I would imagine he's just fine with this.
Yeah. 2 mana here. This is a Diabolic Edict. This is the old rock in a hard place. Which one do you sacrifice? The decision is Mother of Runes.
That is surprising to me. What that tells me is that Rutledge really values Spirit of the Labyrinth in this matchup. Mother of Runes traditionally has been one of the best cards here. Now, granted, I haven't played this matchup since Spirit of the Labyrinth has come out.
Yeah. Just going to pass the turn back. Intentions of Rashad and Porting. Going to take care of the Bayou. Kruger going to draw a card here. It's a copy of Wasteland. Could fire that off to take care of the board if he'd like, but it looks like maybe a Creeping Tar Pit as Kruger's land drop this turn.
Yeah, so now with Mother of Runes gone, cards like that Abrupt Decay that was in Kruger's hand are online. He didn't Abrupt Decay in response to the Rashad Port, so I'm assuming he has another line this turn. And yeah, it looks like he's going to waste the Port.
Yeah, just get that out of the way here. Another copy of Spirit of the Labyrinth drawn here for Rutledge. He's got a pretty decent clock going, attacking here for 3, putting Kruger down to 13, but he wants to get more things on the table. Want to get this game over with, because Kruger's kind of stumbling around a little bit right now. Nowhere near as good as he was doing in the first game.
We do see Caracas now in play for Rutledge.
Another copy of Spirit of the Labyrinth. And again, you can see just how powerful the sideboard cards here are for Kruger against this particular deck. Deed, Charm, and Deluge are insane against Death and Taxes. And that's what you want out of a sideboard card, of course, is you want your sideboard card to be very, very good when you draw them. And all 6 of those cards are great in this matchup if Kruger does stumble into one of them.
Yeah, we see as he plays the second Spirit of the Labyrinth, a Brainstorm was the draw for Kruger. Well, that's not a very appealing option right now.
Don't cast that one.
He does have Abrupt Decay for one of the spirits.
There's a Tarmogoyf in grip, too. Chances are that Tarmogoyf's not going to do very much, but it's there.
Yeah, and it's actually waiting in the wings as a Swords to Plowshares in Jamie Rutledge's hand for that Tarmogoyf.
Oh, there is Tarmo. Not going to be long for this world.
Yeah, we have land and instant in the graveyard and creature, so it's a 3/4.
And that's going to be a game 3 life.
All right, so it goes, that at least counts for 1 Spirit of the Labyrinth swing, but the board is empty again for Kruger. You know, I'm still not all that worried from Kruger's side. Yeah, it's true that Rutledge has 6 power with their creatures, and that's going to have to be addressed. But I like that Kruger, you know, he has an Abrupt Decay. He's going to get to cast it. I think he can recover on this board pretty well.
I think he's okay. You know, things are going to get a little more hairy now because now that Mangara is showing up with Caracas available to save it and actually get that combo online, he can't really mess around anymore. He actually has to do something to stop this.
He's probably going to have to use the Abrupt Decay on the Mangara instead of a Spirit of the Labyrinth, which means he's going to be taking some damage.
Yeah, I mean, the problem with that, obviously, is that the Caracas just bounces the Mangara in response to the Decay, so I think he's actually priced into just having to kill Spirit of the Labyrinth with Abrupt Decay, which is not... I don't think that's what he wants to do, but he's never going to be able to catch the Mangara the way I think that he wants to.
What he could do is he could wait until Rutledge activates Mangara, and when Rutledge targets Mangara with Caracas, and then in response he could Abrupt Decay the Mangara.
Sure.
For those of you unfamiliar with this combo, it doesn't show up all that often. Mangara is worded interestingly. You see how everything's after the colon there. So you can tap Mangara, and Mangara is not actually removed as part of the cost. So if in response to that whole ability, you Caracas and bounce Mangara, well, then she goes back to your hand and is not exiled.
And you see Caracas actually just one-up the Abrupt Decay right there.
Yeah, that was really good for Rutledge.
This is an attack here for 6 by Jamie. And he's just going to replay Mangara and basically put Kruger in the exact same situation that he was in. So Kruger's going to untap. He'll take a draw here. It's another copy of Abrupt Decay.
So this turn seems surprisingly similar to last turn.
Yep.
Board exactly the same, hand exactly the same for Kruger. Except he's at 6 fewer life.
Yeah. Exact same spot. He's going to cast something here. We're going to find out what it is. Looks like it might be a Charlotte's Agent. It is. So now it's time to Cascade.
Yeah, well, nothing in his hand helps. So he's going to go ahead and Cascade.
Yeah, there's a Deathrite Shaman. So now he's just going to try to clog up the board a little bit.
Yeah, and I do think he's dead here. Rutledge has a Swords to Plowshares in hand, so he can Swords a creature, put Kruger to 6, untap, Mangara the other blocker, and swing for the win.
Yeah, we'll see if he sees it. As we do here in the booth.
Looks pretty good. Yep, end step, the Swords will take care of Deathrite Shaman. It's actually exiled, so it's not in the graveyard there. I don't think it's going to matter, though. Kruger goes up to 5.
Take a draw here. Caracas, Mangara,
and
effect on the stack, and then just kill you. Yep.
Just for the extra, we're going to go ahead and Caracas the Mangara, too.
Yeah. Take a look at my sweet deck. Look what I can do with it. As we do tie it up here. Death and Taxes, Charlotte's Bug, going to a game 3. Again, winning this match, likely, well, if Jeremy Rutledge wins, he's in. We know that.
He's absolutely in with a win.
Yeah, he'll go up to 8-1. Jeremy Kruger likely in.
Yeah, so how this works is in the last round of a Swiss event, is the only round where pairings are not random. So what happens is that everybody's arranged basically in standings order, and you are play against the person who's, you start at the top and you just pair down.
Yep.
So what that means is that it's almost certain that Kruger is the highest tiebreak 6-1-1, which means it is probable that with a win, he would jump at least one of the other 7 ones who would draw, which would cause them to not draw, therefore opening a spot for him in a potential top 8.
Well, my friends, if you guys are just joining us, we are in round 9 of our Legacy Opens. Cedric Phillips, Matthias on StarCgames.com Open Series here in Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas, at SCG Live, hashtag SCGDAL for your tweets. We've been talking about preview cards all weekend. We had some sweet unveilings over at PAX yesterday. Unfortunately, we couldn't be there, but I do know that, Brian Kibler is over there representing SoulForge and some other people. One of our video directors, Jeremy Knoll, was actually over there taking photos and taking all the information in. So a lot of cool stuff happened over there at the Magic panel, up to and including some new releases of some sweet new cards. We actually got to see the new M15 card back, like the card facing.
Yeah, so
on a new card.
If you haven't had a chance to see this, it's different. The card still has the same border, but the bottom of each card is black. So when you see there's a couple things that are new with the bottom of it. The bottom is always on a black background. So when you look at stuff like artist, collector's information, and copywriting on the card, it's always going to be white text on a black background, making it easier to read. Also, a small hologram was inserted on each card so that cards will be more distinguishable and harder to counterfeit.
Also, the font is a little bit different, I think, now.
The G on Genesis Hydra certainly looks like I haven't seen that before.
Yeah, it looks like the font's a little bit different. Apparently, it's called the Balearin font. You see creature, where it says creature dash plant hydra too, it's a little bit different. It looks like a little bit fancier now. But as you mentioned, I think that most of this is to avoid counterfeiting, which is obviously a big deal in our game. So that's really cool. Also, this card was designed, it looks like some of the M15 cards were designed by non-Magic players. So that's actually really cool. That's actually really cool, too, as we're being told that this font is actually unique to Magic cards. So that's also cool.
The two pillars on the H are different lengths.
Does that bother you?
Oh, it's like, hello. You know, like when you're in grade school and you had those papers with like the two solid lines and the dotted one in between it? And you're like, all right, now when you do the H, like, the A has to come up to the dotted line in the middle.
Okay.
Yeah. Like, if you'd done that, they would have circled that right side with a red pen and been like, -1, too far down, or something like that.
Your teachers are harsh.
Hey, if it's a penmanship class, you gotta, the lines are there for a reason.
I will say this, your penmanship is very good. You can really write out a deck list. I will give you that.
Years of writing on chalkboards, you see, and whiteboards.
Yes, when you're teaching.
When you teach.
Are your numbers as good as your handwriting is?
I get more practice in my numbers than I do with my letters.
But you didn't answer my question.
Well, that's actually not true. Actually, when you get to a certain point in math probably has more letters than numbers in it.
Oh, sure. I guess that makes sense.
No, the numbers are good.
Okay.
They're good.
Okay.
I do European style numbers though, so that's weird. So you put the flag on the 1s, you cross the 7s. That way they don't look like each other.
That's European style?
Yeah, so
Okay,
that's standard in Europe. The reason you do it is because otherwise your 1s look like L. So if you're like, say you're writing a math equation, it's like 11L plus 5W. You don't want to have like 11L is really bad to write. If you just like if your L's are just a vertical line and your 1s are a vertical line with no flag, like 11L looks like
it looks like 111.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Okay. So I started doing that in grade school, like putting the flag on the 1, but I didn't know why I was doing it. I think I just thought it looked cool. Same thing with the cross through the 7.
Right. So you put the flag on the 1 so it's not an L, but then the problem is that 1s look like 7s. So then you're like, well, I got to make the 7s look different, and that's why there's a line through the 7s.
Are there any other? Do you put a slash through your zeros?
What I do is with the O's, if I do the letter O, like a lowercase o, I do a tail off on the top like you're writing it in cursive.
Okay.
So that it doesn't look like zeros. You can put a slash through the zeros too.
Okay.
That's another way to, You can do both those just to not confuse them.
I just learned something new today.
Also, if you do L's, you can do like a loop, like, a cursive font.
Cursive L?
Yeah, cursive L, so then it doesn't looks nothing like a 1.
It doesn't look anything like a 1.
If you write lots of numbers and letters together in equations, you got to do this stuff. Otherwise, people copy them wrong.
That's true. This is why I don't do math. This is not
penmanship. Penmanship is that was the nail in the coffin for math.
Yeah, it's really, also I don't like that letters are in math too. That just doesn't make any sense. It should just all be numbers.
Well, eventually you get to the point where you have to learn how to write all these Greek letters too, especially if you do physics, then you have to learn the Greek alphabet.
My roommate in college, my last 2 years, he's a physics grad student at Purdue. So
Many Greek letters.
He just has a notebook just full of equations I couldn't hope to read.
I mean, if you were Greek, it would be easier to read them.
And the equations also take like 7 or 8 sheets of paper and take him like weeks to do.
Yeah, physics is less elegant.
It sounds very, very hard. He's been in grad school for like 4 years too. But he loves it, so more power to him. We're underway. Game number 3. Creeping Tar Pit is how we will begin. Mr. Rutledge is going to fire off with an Aether Vial, arguably the best 1-drop that he can play. You could even say this is better than Mother Runes, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. It's interesting to see how Rutledge is valuing cards in this matchup. Like I said before, you like Spirited Labyrinth more than Mother Runes. Aether Vial should be good here, but it's not going to be good if Kruger gets every card in his hand. Then he has nothing to vial in.
Yeah, here's a him. You're going to try to get every card.
Maybe if he gets, he could get all the cards worth vialing.
No.
That's the fun of random discard.
Fun.
There's a reason they don't do random discard often. It's really fun when they just get all your lands. That's the best. You keep a 3-lander on the draw, and then they nuke them all, and they're like, well, that was fun. Now I go.
I can't do anything.
Shouldn't have kept that 3-lander on the draw. It's too risky.
Vial is going to trigger up here to 1. It looks like the him got a Mirren Crusader and a Plains. This is support here from Rutledge. He can actually use that on the upkeep while he's still working his Vial. This is like one of my favorite things in Legacy. It's just playing a Vial and then sitting behind Ports and Wastelands. That's why I like Goblins so much.
Be like, what other deck does that other than, was it Merfolk and Death and Taxes and Goblins?
Yeah. Unfortunately, Merfolk doesn't have Port.
Okay.
Merfolk has Mutavault instead.
Right.
I'm a big fan of just sitting behind a Vial with Port, but also, to be fair, Rashad and Port's my favorite land, so there's that.
And you criticize me for griefing people sometimes. Rashad and Port, yeah, that's really fun.
I didn't say it was fun.
It's your favorite land.
It is.
Okay.
My goal
But you just don't like fun. You just like winning.
My goal is to make sure my opponent has no fun.
Oh, okay.
Here's another copy. I've also cast a lot of that card by Him to Torak, and here's a second one of these. So now all of a sudden, Rutledge is going to have one card left.
Yeah, he is able to get that Mother of Runes into play. As we saw before, Mother of Runes is still a pretty efficient card in this matchup. As long as Kruger can't kill it while it's summoning sick, Rutledge can protect his one remaining card very well.
Him is so insane.
It's really good. Yeah.
Lyle's going to take up to 2 now. I mean, Rutledge has one card left in his hand.
I mean, to be fair, black for sorcery, discard 2 cards not at random is a really good card.
Yeah.
Would be a really good card, really to print it. But they just threw in random just to make it a little bit better.
And now Mother of Runes is going to come into the red zone. Rutledge's last card in his hand is a Mangara. And yes, he can go Wasteland and Porting, but I mean, this is exactly how Kruger wants the game to go, obviously. He's just exhausted all of the resources with 2 cards. And now he just has to find a way to capitalize, assuming that he has more lands.
Mother of Runes shields are down for Mother of Runes this turn.
And even though that's not a land, it functions as a land, as Mangara is going to move up to, a Vial is going to move up to 3 for Mangara. Another Wasteland came rolling off the top. That's pretty good.
One thing I like about Charlotte's Bug is it's pretty hard to mana disrupt the deck. The deck plays a lot of mana sources. It's pretty honest with its lands. I mean, it's greedy. It's trying to play a lot of different colors, but, it's not playing like 17 land and 6 fetches or something silly like that. It's got, he has 21 lands and 4 death rates. That's 25 mana sources in the deck.
Yeah. So the other Wasteland comes down. It takes care of the Creeping Tar Pit, and now the Port takes care of the Underground Sea. Deathrite Shaman's going to remove a land to cast another copy of Deathrite Shaman, but now here comes Mangara. So if Rutledge is able to find a copy of Karakas, things really spiral out of control really quickly here.
Yeah, that Karakas would be very good. Also, if he found Flicker Wisp, that would be good. And
no!
That is what the moment he's like put one hand on the Mangara and one hand on the Vial, it's like, I think I know what just happened. I think there's going to be Flicker Wisp. So once again, this is the same trick that happens with Karakas in the matchup, where he puts his trigger on the stack, the trigger wants to exile both, I believe it's the land and the Mangara, but before it resolves, Flicker Wisp is going to go ahead and blink out that Mangara, so when the trigger resolves, well, the land gets to go away, but there's no Mangara to find, so guess it's just the land.
See, I want to kill the Deathrite Shaman because I've got Port for the land. I don't know if that's right or not, but that's what I want to do in that situation.
I mean, he's probably going to play another land. You can port that one.
Yeah, that's fair.
I don't know how many lands are in the graveyard. Like, if there's about 9 lands in the graveyard, then sure, I think you don't want to hit the land. But if you think that these Deathrite Shamans are going to run out of fuel, I do like taking care of the land.
It's also crazy here to think about where Jamie had, he had his hand just torn apart by him. And now, all of a sudden, it's just like, okay, now we're back here. And yeah, this isn't something that can happen because that card's not going to have haste. Flicker Wisp brought it back, but it's going to be summoning 6. So I think our table spotter is going to mention that because this is not a legal play that can happen. So
yeah, we're gonna go. We'll rewind here for a second. So yeah, remember, a creature has to survive through its controller's upkeep in order for it to lose summoning sickness. Yep. It's not just, it wasn't there that last turn. So we're going to rewind it here, but that is a portent of things to come. It's almost like as soon as Jamie Rutledge gets the chance, he's going for right for the mana sources.
Yeah.
Yeah, what I really liked about that Flicker Wisp was a great draw for Rutledge. Not only did it flicker the Mangara, giving him another exile effect, but it gave him a 3/1, which really advanced his board. His board was very controlling, but he only had 2 power and really creatures he didn't even want. Like these 1/2s actually held off his attack, but that's going to be true no longer as he's going to have 3 in the air.
So Brainstorm looks like it is resolving here. I believe is the case.
Yeah, he tapped one of the death rates for Brainstorm. He's hoping to find more lands, and I think he whiffed. So I think he's currently getting Brainstorm locked on 0 lands in the top 3 and no shuffles, which, as we know, soon to come, 1 fewer Deathrite Shaman. Like that, this could be real bad for Kruger.
You see he's putting a Baleful Strix back. I'm with you. I think he just might be Brainstorming. I don't even know if he found a land. He's just trying to figure out what 2 cards he wants to put back.
Yeah, he had some options there. So he had 2 mana this turn for 1 turn. He could have cast Baleful Strix or Diabolic Edict or Brainstorm. He went with Brainstorm, and I think that's the play with the highest upside. Had he found a land, he could have done all of the above, played Brainstorm, then played a 2 mana spell. It would have been great. The downside of going with the Brainstorm line is if you don't find the land, it's the worst of the 3 lines.
Yeah, it's really, really bad news.
Like an Edict here would be okay, because I think all 3 of Rutledge's creatures are doing something important. He has a second Brainstorm.
Probably want to keep that. Tough to say.
I mean, it's not going to dig you any deeper, right? If you're getting Brainstorm locked, you're getting Brainstorm locked. If you're going to be locked for 2 turns, you're getting locked for 2 turns. And there's nothing you're going to do about it.
It's up to Deathrite Shamans now to try to get the job done.
He also has Umezawa's Jite in his hand.
Yeah,
so a lot of 2-drops.
Yeah, getting that active is going to be really tough. Really tough.
Yeah, yep. Death and Taxes, a lot of times can be a prison deck in these matchups.
Here's another copy of Deathrite Shaman. So
I like that play a lot. Just get more mana, because
Yeah.
you know that's where Rutledge is going. One question is just how many lands are in the graveyard? You know, how many activations do these guys actually have?
not a ton, and I assume that that Mungar's going to take care of 1 of these copies of Deathrite Shaman. And so he's just going to fire away. He says, get that thing out of here.
Yeah, so there's 3 lands in Jeremy Kruger's graveyard, no lands in Rutledge's graveyard. So actually, if you're exiling the Deathrite Shaman, I'm questioning how much are you actually keeping Kruger off mana here? You know, he only has 3 mana left. Like, by that, 3 lands left in graveyard.
Sure.
We know that a land will not be drawn this turn. Another Mother of Runes for Rutledge, so all the removal in Kruger's hand is going to be, well, it can't be targeted. How's that? It's going to have to be Edict effects, Toxic Deluge, Golgari Charm, that sort of thing.
Pernicious Deed, but we're a long way away from that one.
How good will Golgari Charm be on this board?
It'd be insane. Gonna remove some lands. Is this a charm? This is a Baleful Strix.
So he's trying to dig his way through that Brainstorm lock so that he can get a fresh set of cards to Brainstorm off of. I've noted he's only got 1 more land in graveyards, so he did lose a mana source that turn.
Another copy of Port looks like the draw here for Jamie.
So Jeremy's gonna need 2 lands.
And here's a block, it looks like. And Mother of Rune's just gonna say, hey, protection from blue or black, we're good. And I got another Mother of Rune's just in case anything goes wrong. We're gonna draw a card here. Looks like it goes to Chase the Mind Sculptor that was drawn.
That's something we're gonna cast soon.
Well, Brainstorm's here to help.
Yep. How many lands can we find? It looks like 1.
Looks like 1 just to buy you.
Yep, no ways to shuffle either.
Yeah, this is honestly the worst I've seen Brainstorm be in Legacy in a while. But this is just kind of the mana denial factor of Death and Taxes. I mean, it showed up here quite a bit. Mangara, Wasteland, Ports, just not letting Kruger cast his spells. And then the clock, while it's not impressive, it's just a little flicker wisp. It's enough.
Right.
It's just enough.
So going back, one line that Jeremy could have taken if he knew that top card was a Jace, which I think he put it back with a Brainstorm, that last turn he could have Charless Agented to cascade through the high drops to try to reset his deck. Well, no, sorry, he only had 2 lands. So if he had 3 Death Rates, he could have. But I guess he never had a chance to use 3 mana. So does get to keep his 1 land. But remember, these next 2 draws, neither of them are land, and the Death Rates no longer make mana. So
yeah, he's fresh Shadow lands in the bin.
He has 1 mana, and there's a Reshad Import on the other side. So he's going to take 3 next turn, and the turn after, and the turn after right now. So he's kind of at a virtual 6.
It says Port. Let me tap you on the end step. Rutledge is going to untap. Leave that Vial at 3. And Kruger sitting at 15.
Now, on that tap on end step, he could be eating creatures, I suppose, or eating spells. He could be using the Death Rate.
Yeah, I think I would want to be using the Death Rate in that situation. But I think the real issue here, truth being told, is that there's some frustration on Kruger's side that he's not actually able to cast the spells and do what he wants to do. And he is actually going to eat something this go around. Like, he could have ate something the last time, and it looks like he may have missed one. But
yeah, I think he wants to do that too. He just needs to buy time until he finds land. His hand has a lot of really good cards in it. And really, once he gets to just 1 more land, if he can find a Golgari Charm, like, this game's fine.
Yeah, we're watching an entirely different game if he finds a charm. Not quite sure what card was picked up there. Definitely a 2-mana spell.
Stoneforge, Spirit of the Labyrinth. Didn't find anything, so I'm going to go with
Be surprised.
Spirit.
Thalia works too.
Ooh.
Yeah, that might be the best of the ones that you mentioned because he's so constricted.
Now he's going to need another mana.
Yeah.
That's great. Death and Taxes doing one of the things it does best, and that is being a prison deck.
Yeah. It's really funny because just a lot of cards that Death and Taxes plays just seem like relatively fair. I mean, truthfully, they're not fair, but given the context of Legacy, they seem like they're fair. Like Mother of Runes is one of the best one-drops of all time. So is Vial. Flicker Wisp just interacts very well with the deck. Thalia is very good. Port was a card that was banned and block constructed. Like,
Yeah.
this has a lot of good cards.
It's got a lot of really good cards. It's interesting because the creatures are all so utility-ish. You know,
Yeah.
they aren't. What is it? It's so well tuned to beat Legacy. I remember there was a couple opens ago. I believe I was working this with Patrick Sullivan, where between rounds, Andrew Shrout and I, we played Death and Taxes versus Mono Black Devotion from Standard. And like, it's pretty close. Mono Black Devotion actually has a lot of game in that matchup because Death and Taxes is so tuned to beat a Legacy meta. There's like, you know, if you just like play basics and play Gray Merchants, like that kind of stuff can actually be hard for the deck.
Well, decisions.
Yeah, can't. So Kruger is he's not taking too much damage each turn. Now he's taking 5. And he actually is gaining 2, so it's like a virtual 3. If he can top deck enough lands, he can dig his way out of this. But it seems like every time he draws a mana source, Rutledge finds another way to deny a mana source.
Yeah. There's a sword.
That's... Well, okay, that one's at least not a mana source. I mean, the second Death Right for a while now hasn't been relevant.
Sure. So Rutledge is going to take a draw. Looks like another copy of Mother of Runes. And again, he can just keep serving in here. And it's funny because it's just kind of, wow, even Mother of Runes feel a little frisque. In for 6 we
Everything's
go.
tapped. Yeah, you still have a second one. And a third one.
And now he says upkeep. Tap your Bayou again, if you don't mind. If you activate your Deathrite Shaman to remove a creature, you go up to 7, and then you're actually facing 7 on the board.
Yeah, and with Thalia, there's no card that Kruger's going to draw here. And I think this looks like it's going to be a top 8 for Jamie Rutledge.
Yeah, it seems like it's been a little while since we've seen Death and Taxes in the top 8, but it did its thing in this particular match. And it's funny because Kruger, we talk about the sideboard cards that he has access to. Again, Deed, Deluge, and Charm, and wasn't able to find any of those to actually get the job done. So Rutledge is going to untap here, and I think in just a moment, my friend.
Here's what I'm impressed with. On a day where we have seen no show and tell decks in the entire tournament, Death and Taxes is making its way through to top 8.
Yeah, I mean, there's a chance that he just dispatched a bunch of show and tell decks, you know, in the Swiss rounds where we haven't seen Jamie, but
yeah,
this one looked pretty easy for him. You see Kruger's going to consult his hand, and he's going to extend it. Jamie Rutledge, with Death and Taxes, moves on to 8-1, defeating Jeremy Kruger, and it looks like we're going to see D&T in the top 8 tonight.
Yeah.